our influencers will be battling it out on one of our favorite tech topics, no code. Get ready to hear some expert opinions, and then we want to hear from you on social media. We need you all to weigh in on who you think makes the most compelling argument so we can declare our weekly winner. This battle is up to you. So if you have a passionate opinion, make sure to share it on social media with hashtag #BitBattles to get your community weighing in as well. You can vote until Friday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. We will be giving away 20 free premium annual Pluralsight subscriptions. So make sure you sign up to be entered to win on our Best in Tech landing page. And don't forget to read the terms and conditions. Make sure you share this week's battle if you have a friend who you know who might really love a Pluralsight subscription. A few other reminders and then we'll get started. First, you can find this week's free weekly courses aligned to our topic of no code below. Second, if you haven't tried your hand at our new Stack Up game, check it out. It's a great way to see how your skills add up with other players. And with that, I'm super excited to introduce you to this week's No Code Fighters. I'd like to welcome Jesse Showalter and Tim Moody.
Hey, everybody.
We're excited to have you both weigh in on the ongoing debate that is no code, and anxious to see who wins. I'd love to just do a quick introduction for you before we get into the punches. In one corner, we have Jesse Showalter. Jesse is a full stack designer and content creator who's on a mission to make an impact on the world. His unique skill set spans everything from branding, UX UI, design, and front-end development. He has 15 years experience helping startups and Fortune 500 companies reach their goals. In corner two, we have Tim Moody. Tim is a customer success engineer from Boston who's spent the last 10 years helping Fortune 500 companies build better digital experiences through testing, optimization, and other marketing technologies. And for the past 2 years, he's been evangelizing a digital approach called continuous product design to help large companies lean into agile development. And we'd like to thank Tim for taking the bullet today and arguing the con side of no code.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into this, any fighting words for each other?
Yeah, Tim, you're going down, my friend. You're going down.
Such bravado. Well, Jesse, I do appreciate your body of work, but just to let you know, the gloves are coming off today.
Wow.
So
he brought gloves to this thing. I'm excited right now.
I have props. Yep.
All right, to kick this battle off, I have a question to get us going. What is the biggest misconception about no code out there?
So the biggest misconception in my mind around no code, low code is the idea that you can actually get away without any code. It's very hyperbolic. I think in practice, what you're getting is less code, which is valuable, but not quite the promise that a lot of these companies are advertising.
It's interesting. I would say, I think the biggest misconception, and I guess I kind of agree with you, but I'm going to take it in a different direction, is that no code means turnkey, which means, right, like plug and play 2 or 3 things and everything's up and running. There's still going to be some work. It's not a magic pill. It's just a different lane to run in. So I think that misconception of, oh, this is easy. It's actually, I agree with the hyperbolic language, certain applications or no code platforms that would say, build your app in 5 minutes. I'm like, listen, you can't make a grilled cheese sandwich in 5 minutes. Stop lying. It's awesome, but don't overstate like what you're doing there. So I kind of agree a little bit, actually.
Awesome. And so for our first round, let's go ahead and start off, Tim, with your first point about no code.
Sure. So again, just to caveat some of this, Jesse and I are both advocates of no code, low code, but for the sake of this discussion, I am happy to be the punching bag. And I think I will be able to represent some of the dissenting opinions, especially among developers and people who have invested a lot of time in that skill set, and think that potentially some of these tools might be supplanting a lot of that work. So happy to get into this. So the first point that I would bring forth is around scalability, namely that a lot of these tools don't. If you look at the pricing packages for a lot of these tools, and I'll pick on the visual website tools because they're probably the most prominent right now. A couple of them have gone public. They've kind of proven their use case. But if you kind of dive in a little bit deeper, what you'll see is that they're really catering to the lower end of the market. I was on Wix.com earlier this week, and I was just sleuthing about, and I was looking at the different pricing packages, and I tried to find the most enterprise offering that they had, and I found a package called Business VIP that was $47 a month and allotted you 35 gigabytes of storage. So this kind of has me shaking my head a little bit because I don't know what meaningful business is operating within those confines. Similarly, I was looking at Webflow, and one of the constraints they put in place on their highest tier is a maximum of 100 pages. To give folks an idea of scale, if you look at Pluralsight's website and pull up how many pages Google has indexed, Pluralsight has 30,000 pages. So Webflow is off by several orders of magnitude. And a lot of the time, what you see with these companies on the packaging and pricing page is a final tier called contact sales, which is kind of startup speak for if you have a really big project, call us and we'll see how deep your pockets are and extract as much money as we can. So, my question is, sure, this is great for the one man, two woman shop, but does it really work for companies trying to operate at scale? And all of this kind of reconnaissance just leads me to believe that no code may be suitable for rapid prototyping, early proof of concepts, but a threshold is going to be reached where businesses will have to pivot to pro code as they quickly outgrow these low code solutions.
And what would your response to that be, Jesse?
I mean, when it comes to the idea of scalability, it's interesting. Like, you dig into the different pricing packages and enterprise level, but I think that the word scalability is really a subjective word, right? Like, scalability does not mean Coca-Cola or Pluralsight's 30,000 pages or CSS Tricks with like a gazillion stinking blog posts. It doesn't necessarily mean that, right? But scalability can be subjective. Maybe somebody's starting a new e-commerce shop. They have 3 products. They're going to be able to scale for a while. If you think of something, not my favorite at all, but something like a Squarespace, like website builder, if we're talking in the realm of like visual website builders, like Squarespace has a decent amount of scalability, but I don't think that their target market, I don't think that they're lying in any way, in shape, form, and saying our target market is the Pluralsights, the Coca-Colas, right? Like the PepsiCos. That's not their target market. So I think that these tools, they work in the realm of which they're advertised to. I'm not 100% sure if I've ever seen any sort of Webflow marketing campaign that's been marketed towards like Apple as a client, right? Like, although you can go anywhere from a one-man shop, a one piece of product, a small freelancer who needs to make a $5,000 website, all the way up to, I mean, I've been around and seen people making as freelancers pretty decent size, like scaled websites inside of like a Webflow or a Squarespace. And that freelancer is going to go ahead and bring in $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for that project. Clients happy, products selling, everything's rocking. So every tool has its place, right? Just because a handsaw can't chop down as many trees, right, as a chainsaw, doesn't mean a handsaw doesn't have a place in the toolbox. So that would be my thing about scalability. Also, side note, little kind of like detour on the scalability side, I would say that scalability is not only like a subjective term, but a lot of these tools have like certain workflows. For instance, you can actually export the entire code base inside of something like a Webflow and then push it into a pro code kind of like workflow or an agile workflow with code and expand off of that. But I'll tell you personally, I love hand rolling me a website in front end for front end development purposes. But I can create that same website instead of 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can rock that thing in Webflow in 6 hours. Like that's all day. And then I can export that code and work off that. You can also consider it a scalability jumpstart tool if you want as well, I think.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And did you have anything else you'd like to add to that, Tim?
Well, I think it's all spot on. I would just kind of echo, it feels like a little bit of backtracking, like basically you're agreeing that that these solutions cater towards smaller enterprises. And so, that was kind of aligned with what I said about early stage or rapid prototyping. But it still agrees with my point that there is a state reached by these companies where they may outgrow these solutions. And the point about exporting the code is a good one, but I would urge you to take a look at those capabilities. Sometimes they add an export capability to kind of check the box, but who knows if you can actually make sense of that zip file and the data structure. I'm not sure I would want to look at a glide export and try to make sense of that obfuscated React Native code. And that's not a problem that's unsolvable, but there's not a whole lot of precedence there about developers picking up where no-code solutions left off. So my intuition is that they're probably a little limited there.
That's good. No, I hear that.
And for the next round, Jesse, you have a point about breaking down barriers that you'd like to add.
Yeah, I think it piggybacks off of, Tim's previous point about scalability. Is we tend to think scalability in the thousands of pages, the hundreds of thousands of pages, the hundreds and thousands of dollars or millions of dollars that a company is generating. But really, like when I think no code, low code, I think about the breaking down barriers that stand between somebody who has a good idea and solves a user's problem, and it allows them to get something there, like get something up quickly, right? So no longer is it, I need to be like a mobile application developer or know a mobile application developer, but it could be somebody who's really determined, has a lot of grit, and now has access to tool sets that allows them to bring their problem solving solution to life, right? And so kind of piggyback off scalability to go, of course, from 100 pages to 300,000 pages, that's a scalability issue. But going from nothing to something is actually a barrier issue that I think no code's doing a phenomenal job at. It's making it accessible. It's making it accessible to stay-at-home moms and designers who've never ever touched a line of code but have a great idea and want to enter the space, right? It's breaking down barriers of I'm not good enough, I don't know somebody, I don't have the money, the resources, the ... It's breaking all those barriers down and allowing, in my opinion, a whole group of individuals who could be phenomenal creative thinkers, problem solvers, creators of things that we can all use and benefit us as people. It's breaking down those barriers. That's what I'm all about, is knocking down doors and letting other people in that don't necessarily think the way that I think, and they don't necessarily have to have the skill set that I have. I'm all about that because I know that my perspective as a human being is limited. I need other people's perspectives. And if you're a soccer mom or used to work in a retail chain and you have a good idea, you're coming from a different place and perspective. I want those barriers to be knocked down so I can work with you and see really what you build, because it could benefit not only everybody, but me personally.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And Tim, did you have a response to that?
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. The value of these companies is the accessibility to non-code savvy individuals. It's the speed to market. I can't tell you how many times I get on consulting calls with people and they're in the weeds with a MySQL database or managing WordPress, and I'm literally like, scrap all this, webflow.com. There's a place for that. The only problem there, and a little kind of a contrary viewpoint, is that sword cuts both ways. If I can go to webflow.com and spin up, timsyoutubechannel.com, a nice, beautiful website, well, that also means someone across the globe can spin up their website, or they could even clone mine, because all these are library template based. So they can just pull down my template, copy the content, and they're able to actually spin it up as quickly as I am. So it doesn't, there's an arms race there that doesn't quite behoove anyone. It just kind of moves the ball down the field a little bit. And then the final point I'd say, you harped on how it makes application building and software development more accessible to the lay person, the laywoman, layman, to the lay person. But this is not novel. If you look back in the early 2000s, Adobe came out with Dreamweaver, which was a desktop application meant to visually build websites. And did that really deliver on the promise? Did it really disrupt web development and bring that capability to the masses, I don't even know if that product is still operating. So, is it the disruptive technology that we've been sold on, or is it just another incremental improvement?
Well, to just quick rebuttal, and then I'd love to hear your next point, Tim, is when it comes to this idea of breaking down barriers, like technology, there's this, like you said, this incremental, like pushing forward of technology, and Dreamweaver is still around. I would never open it up, but I will say this, there's a lot of people like me who opened up Dreamweaver in like 2008 and started building table-based layouts and then realized that they loved it. So it's the idea. It was a desire to build, a desire to make, and then latch onto whatever tool is there. And a lot of people will grow from whatever tool. Like I realized that table-based layouts, Dreamweaver, it's not going to be my thing, not my jam. I'm going to have to go out and learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and start building websites myself. But it's interesting to see that I know a whole slew of people who got training wheels into the industry through some sort of tool. But again, I hate tools. I don't love tools. I love people, and I love ideas, and I love products. That's what I love. So for me, the breaking down the barrier thing is I could give a crap about a hammer. I care about the house, baby. That's what I want.
Okay, Tim, for the next round, let's talk about lock-in.
Okay. So just to preface this a little bit, this is always going to be a dynamic that's at play, even if you're not using low-code tools. If you're building stuff from scratch, you're always beholden to someone. But it strikes me that it is more significant when it comes to low-code, no-code. And the idea here is what these low-code tools are trying to get people to do is build their entire product on their platform. And that strikes me as a little bit risky because the future of your business is going to be tied to a single vendor. And something I'd be thinking about is, what happens if like this platform goes away? Like, are you building your house on sand? What happens if the company undergoes some major changes? What happens if the pricing model changes and it's no longer economically feasible for you? These customers are locked into these changes. Not to mention kind of a slew of other issues that accompany this. Things like, if I do build my entire business on a single platform, who really owns the IP for that? I'm sure that's going to be a fun quandary for the legal department to argue over. But an eventuality is a company is going to build a business on top of one of these platforms, and that business is going to become a unicorn. And I do not have enough faith in these companies that they're not going to see dollar signs when that happens and try to lay claim to some of that development. Jesse brought up this before. There is the ability to migrate away from these solutions, but in practice, how accessible is that? There's not a whole lot of precedence there about how to. There's not a whole lot of precedence there about how to work with these exported outputs from these companies. So you can see how any entrepreneur or aspiring business owner might be a little apprehensive about putting so much stock of their business into one of these no-code solutions.
I'll jump right in and like with a little bit of a rebuttal. And, when it comes to this idea of locking in, you said it and I agree with you that we're actually all beholden to somebody and something, right? Like, so we're all beholden to whether or not Twilio shuts down your text messaging service, or Twilio goes out of business. Does that mean before I build my product, I need to build my own Twilio? So we are all technically beholden to someone, something. This is just a more accessible version. It's quicker for people to jump in. And I think that migrating, everybody has to, you want to migrate away from Heroku to some other sort of service or from Twilio to some other service. Like, it's all manual migration at some point, right? But I don't believe in the idea of locking in, because I believe that when it comes to no code or low code, the people we're marketing to is people that don't have technical founders and are able to get something up and running. And I know actually three businesses have started as no code like tools that later on then migrated, right? And yes, they were locked into some sort of proprietary framework, but at that point, they had started making enough money. Their business was actually revenue positive. They could say, now we have the money to actually invest and custom build this thing out the way that we want to without the limitations. Did they have that money beforehand? Absolutely not. So they were able to skip and bypass a lot of steps. And again, everyone's beholden to somebody, right? If all of a sudden Google decides that your your application is not appropriate, or my YouTube channel is no longer appropriate, and kick me off their platform, it hasn't stopped me from building a YouTube channel, right? Which is in and of itself a no-code solution, right? It allows me to publish content without me having, or to build my own publishing like service. So we're all beholden to technologies, to platforms, to things. And if we don't have problems with it in one area, I think it's just a thought process that actually stops you from creating and making. And back to that barrier issue, right? I'd rather worry about late barriers later. I'd rather worry about Cadillac problems later, when the Cadillac is up and running, and not build the car because what happens if the engine shuts down 10 years from now. I want to build the car now, in my opinion.
Awesome. And that is an excellent point. Going into our next round, where we talk about speed to market. And I believe you had a point around that, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, Tim kind of brought it up a little bit, like speed to market, or like how fast can you get something to market? And it used to be, I have spent some time doing some hackathons and pulled some long weekends, like enjoying myself a hackathon, right? And it used to be that you showed up, you had your businessy people, your concept people, right? You got mixed into teams. You're really hoping you found like a solid developer, and the designer there didn't really matter. Where you're like, you're just going to create a business card and a janky logo in like 48 hours. That used to be a hackathon. But now there's this actual opportunity that you can show up with other like-minded people, and in a weekend, concept and application, find a real user problem out there in the real world, right? Move, and maybe it's a mobile application that's the right solution. Use something like Glide, use something like Bravo Studio, and have a legitimate Android and iOS application up and running in the App Store. Download now. Let's start getting revenue. You can literally push to market. I built an entire board game application. I pushed it to market in 48 hours in a single weekend. Like, it was a couple cups of coffee, right? It was IPA in the evening, and it was 2 days during the weekend. And I had an application out, and I was like, well, that was fun. Right. And something people can actually use and enjoy. And so the idea that, and whether you want to call it an MVP or an actual idea, isn't it so interesting that now part of that, you were talking about that product design process earlier as part of your bio, where Jeremy was sharing that about your bio, Tim. Isn't it amazing that now that product design process can cycle faster and faster? And the faster that cycle can go, can't we improve? Can't we increase? Can't we make it better? Because we get real user feedback. And I no longer have to send things to usertesting.com. I go, download it. I made it in a weekend. Download it and tell me what you think about it. So within 48 hours, you can get something through testing into market, real world testing, pull it back in and cycle around. I think it's a really beneficial thing for that product design process.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Tim, did you have anything to add to that?
So I can expand on this, but you'll hear no major arguments from me on this front. And I do think this is where no code shines. I used to work early in my career for a company that was in the business of managing their own data centers. And I now work for a company that uses BigQuery to do that. And the contrast is stark. Not having to deal with scaling issues, being able to rapidly go to market, as Jesse mentioned, this is super, super powerful. But it does kind of reinforce what I was saying before, which is, this is part of like the MVP model. Like this is, low code, no code shines brightest during the early stages when you have an idea and you want to bring it to market and gather data about its viability. It still doesn't answer the question of whether the low code, no code solution is the best tool as that company matures. And one thing I would just call out is, if it is so easy for us to just utilize one of these tools to spin something up, that does mean it's also as easy for our competitors to do that. So it really does start to beg the question about what does it mean for companies to create novel IP, essentially, right? Like we can all go to Webflow and we can create a replica website, but what is new about your business that is not being done elsewhere? And I think no code, low code, this movement really shines a light on that. And that's what's really important. When you're starting a startup, it's bringing something new to the market and not reinventing the wheel on everything else.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, actually. I think we're in agreement on this point. Like, you can spin up a clone like inside of something like a Webflow of like the Apple website, but are you actually selling AirPod Pros, right? Or are you selling some cheap knockoffs? So really like that old saying, right? Like that content is king, that the product actually has to be good. I feel like the rubber's meeting the road now, right? So if I have a great product, I could actually get it fast to market and no longer is that hindrance there, right? Of like, oh, but I have this phenomenal product. It's a better mousetrap than any mousetrap out there. I don't know how to build a website and sell this thing. E-commerce is so difficult. Like there no longer are those things in play. I feel like the cream of the crop is going to start rising to the top and the junk is going to drop off the cliff. And I'm like all about that.
Excellent. So as we go into our final round, let's present some closing arguments. And we started out with Tim, so I'll start out with Jesse for the closing arguments on no code.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, my closing argument would generally speaking be innovation, right? I'm a fan of technology moving forward, of products moving forward, of the better thing that's going to help more people. And I think that what's most important is ideas. I don't think that technology is the most important thing because you can walk down to your local Goodwill right now and find a bunch of 8-track tapes, cassette tapes, and oh my gosh, it's 2021. CDs are out, DVDs are out, streaming is in. What's the next thing? So technology is going to leave a slew of dead bodies behind it, but ideas are going to be the thing that persists. Good ideas, valuable ideas, and the people that can bring those ideas. So for me, no code is about innovation. No code is about freeing people up who have good ideas, but don't necessarily love technology. I love people that love technology. I love people that think algorithmically and can think about code and process it. I love me a good a good meme about like back-end development. Everybody does. I'm with it. But at the end of the day, it's just not, technology won't stand the test of time. People and ideas stand the test of time. That's my big closing drive there.
Awesome. And how about you, Tim?
Sure. So in closing, what I would say is I will grant you, Jesse and company, that low code, no code has made some pretty significant strides that are pretty notable. And, I will just again caveat that a lot of my rhetoric was a bit tongue in cheek here. As I'm a user of these products, I'm an advocate of no code solutions. But I will say that there's a legitimate argument to be made that again, no code is not quite the game changer it's positioning itself. It has a place in the larger ecosystem. I think specifically like the promise that it may be able to deliver on is that it can move projects from along a continuum from impossible to possible, from hard to easy, and from easy to automatic. But it can't move from point A all the way to point B. We're talking with most innovation, we're talking incremental improvements and not radical changes. And one thing, a very distilling question that I'd like to just put out there into the ether is, do these tools use themselves? Do they drink their own champagne? And this would just be an exercise for people to investigate. And I think a lot of the times you're going to find that, again, these tools are appropriate during a certain phase of the business. And at some point, the businesses do need to undergo their own in-house manual development efforts. But again, that's not to discount the immense value that can be brought forth with these tools.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for participating in our Bit Battles. Now it's up to all of you to crown our no-code Bit Battle winner. Go to this URL, which is also in the description, to cast your vote. You have until 11 a.m. Eastern on Friday to tell us what you think. Spread the word on social media and let your network know who you think the winner is. Are you pro no code or is it not your thing? Use the hashtag BitBattles to take a stand. And don't forget, your vote is how we'll crown a winner. So make sure to click that vote button below. Did this battle inspire you to learn more about no code? Make sure to check out and share our free weekly no-code courses, or test your skills on our brand new Stack Up game. Have you made the leaderboard yet? Now's your chance. And don't forget to enter to win one of our free annual premium Pluralsight subscriptions. Thank you all for watching the Best in Tech Battles.